The antique shop had always intrigued Evelyn. Tucked away in a quiet alley, it was a labyrinth of forgotten treasures, each item whispering stories of its own. She wandered in one rainy afternoon, seeking refuge from the downpour, and immediately felt the weight of the past pressing down on her. Amidst the clutter of dusty books and tarnished trinkets, a large, ornate mirror caught her eye. Its frame was gilded, intricately carved with vines and faces that seemed to shift when she wasn't looking directly at them. The glass was strangely pristine, reflecting the dim shop with an almost unnatural clarity. "How much for the mirror?" Evelyn asked the shopkeeper, an elderly man with a crooked smile. "It's not for everyone," he said cryptically, his milky eyes fixing on hers. "But if you truly want it, it's yours for $50. Evelyn didn't hesitate. She was drawn to it in a way she couldn't explain. Once home, she placed the mirror in her bedroom, its presence dominating the space. It felt alive, as if it were watching her. That night, as she prepared for bed, Evelyn noticed something odd. The reflection of her room in the mirror seemed wrong. It was subtle at first, a slight distortion, like a ripple in water. But as she stared, the differences became more pronounced. The reflection showed her bedroom, but the objects were subtly misplaced. Her bedside lamp was on the wrong side. A book she had left on her nightstand was absent. And then there was the figure. At first, she thought it was her own reflection. But as she leaned closer, the figure didn't move in sync with her. It stood still, staring back at her with a blank expression. Evelyn stumbled back, her breath hitching. When she looked again, the figure was gone and her reflection was normal. She laughed nervously, chalking it up to exhaustion and an overactive imagination. The following days, strange things began to happen. She would catch glimpses of movement in the mirror out of the corner of her eye. Objects in her room would shift positions without explanation. At night, she heard faint whispers, though she could never pinpoint their source. In fact, instead of closing her eyes, she sometimes found herself watching her go around the room left and right when the rest of the house was dark. One evening, as she sat reading, she felt an inexplicable urge to look at the mirror. Reluctantly, she turned her gaze toward it. This time, the figure was unmistakable. A woman, identical to Evelyn, but with sunken eyes and a malevolent grin. The woman in the mirror raised a hand and beckoned. Evelyn froze, her body paralyzed by a cold dread. The figure mouthed words she couldn't hear, but the intent was clear. "Come closer." "No," Evelyn whispered, shaking her head. The lights in the room flickered, and the air grew colder. The mirror's glass began to ripple, like the surface of a pond disturbed by a stone. The figure pressed its hand against the glass, and Evelyn watched in horror as the barrier between them began to dissolve. Panicking, she grabbed the blanket and threw it over the mirror, cutting off the vision. The room fell silent, but the chill remained. That night, Evelyn couldn't sleep. She lay in bed, staring at the covered mirror, her heart pounding with every creak of the floorboards. Around midnight, the whispers began again. They were louder now, insistent and mocking. The blanket covering the mirror began to shift, as if something was pushing against it from the other side. "Evan." The voice was low and guttural, echoing in her ears. She bolted upright, grabbing a nearby chair. As the blanket slid to the floor, the mirror revealed the grinning figure once more. But this time, it wasn't confined to the glass. A hand reached out, skeletal and pale, gripping the edge of the mirror. Evelyn screamed as the figure began to emerge, its body twisting unnaturally as it pulled itself into her world. Desperate, she swung the chair at the mirror. The glass shattered with an ear-splitting crash, fragments scattering across the floor. The figure let out a blood-curdling shriek, its form disintegrating into the shards. Breathing heavily, Evelyn stared at the broken mirror. The whispers had stopped, and the room was still. But as she bent down to gather the pieces, she noticed something chilling. In each shard, the reflection of the figure remained, its hollow eyes watching her. And then one by one, the shards began to move.